Welcome back to our channel. What can a dime do? More than you'd expect. Discover its true value. In 1972, a seemingly ordinary dime rolled off the presses of the United States Mint, destined to be just another small piece of pocket change, circulating through everyday transactions across the country. To most people, this dime would have seemed just like any other, a 10-cent coin with the same design, the same size, and the same value as countless others before it. But hidden within this seemingly standard coin was a remarkable story, one that would turn this particular dime into a rare and highly coveted treasure in the world of numismatics. It's hard to imagine that a simple coin like the 1972 dime could hold such incredible value, but as many collectors know, the world of coins is full of surprises. What seemed like a regular dime in 1972 turned out to be far more significant than anyone could have predicted, and today, one such coin can fetch a staggering $130,000. Let's dive into the fascinating history behind this coin, how it became so valuable, and the remarkable tale of the 1972 USA 1 dime coin that's captured the attention of collectors and enthusiasts around the world. To start, let's look at the historical context of the 1972 dime. The year 1972 was a time of change in the United States. The country was in the middle of a turbulent period, politically and socially. The Vietnam War was nearing its end, and the Watergate scandal was unfolding, which would ultimately lead to President Richard Nixon's resignation just a few years later. On the economic front, the United States was experiencing inflation and an oil crisis, which affected many aspects of daily life. In terms of coinage, however, the U.S. Mint had been fairly consistent in producing its familiar designs, and the dime was no exception. By 1972, the dime had been in its current design for decades. The obverse, or front of the coin, featured the image of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, who had passed away in 1945. This portrait of Roosevelt had been used on the dime since 1946, just 1 year after his death, as a tribute to his leadership during the Great Depression and World War II. The reverse of the coin depicted a torch, olive branch, and oak branch, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. These designs had become iconic and were familiar to Americans who used dimes daily, whether for vending machines, small purchases, or just as part of their everyday change. The 1972 dime, like many of the dimes that had come before it, seemed destined to circulate quietly and be used for its intended purpose, as a 10-cent piece in the hands of American citizens. But as with many coins in history, an error during the minting process would change the fate of the 1972 dime forever. The mistake that occurred with the 1972 dime would be relatively minor at first glance. It was a simple error, but one that would end up creating a coin of great rarity and tremendous value. The 1972 coin is infamous in the numismatic world due to a particular minting anomaly that occurred in its production. A very small number of 1,972 dimes were struck using worn-out or damaged dies, which led to a noticeable error in the coin's appearance. This error, while subtle to the untrained eye, created a difference in the coin's features that made it distinct from the majority of the dimes minted that year. You see, in the world of coin minting, dies are crucial components. They are engraved metal tools used to stamp the design onto a coin surface, and over time, dies wear down from the repeated use in striking coins. When this happens, the details of the design can become blurry or soft, leading to coins with imperfections. In the case of the 1972 dime, the die used to mint a small number of coins was heavily worn, causing the features on the coins to be slightly faded and less distinct. Now, you might wonder, how does this affect a coin's value? To many people, a coin with blurry or less sharp details might seem like an undesirable mistake. But in the world of numismatics, coin errors are incredibly sought after. Collectors prize coins with unusual characteristics or flaws because they are rare, often produced in very limited numbers, and carry a sense of history. These coins are valuable precisely because they are different, and the 1972 dime with its worn die is a perfect example of this phenomenon. The 1972 worn die error coin became a sought-after item almost immediately after collectors began to recognize its uniqueness. While it may not have been obvious to everyone, coin collectors with a trained eye could spot the flaw and understand its significance. As the news of this error spread, demand for the 1972 worn die dime grew. Collectors who knew about the rarity of these coins started seeking them out, scouring change, coin rolls, and auctions to get their hands on one. But it wasn't just the worn die error that made the 1972 dime significant. Over time, other factors began to add to the allure of this particular coin. The 1972 dime, due to the nature of the era and its rarity, became a symbol of the kind of unexpected discovery that all coin collectors hoped for. A coin that could pass unnoticed in everyday transactions, yet turn out to be worth a fortune simply because of a minor mistake in the minting process. This is where the story of the 1972 dime starts to take on the kind of legend that is so common in the world of coin collecting. As more of these era coins were found and documented, they started to attract attention not only from collectors but also from dealers, investors, and even the media. The story of how a simple mistake at the mint led to a coin with extraordinary value began to spread, and soon, the 1972 dime had entered the spotlight. What is the value of this rare and extraordinary 1972 worn die dime today? After years of increasing demand, growing interest in the coin, and more of these era coins being discovered, the value of the 1972 dime has risen dramatically. A coin that started out as a mere 10-cent piece is now worth an astonishing $130,000. Yes, you heard that right, a dime that was minted with a minor flaw, in 1972, is now worth $130,000, making it one of the most valuable dimes ever produced in the United States. This incredible value reflects the rarity of the coin and the unique circumstances that led to its creation. It's a reminder of the unexpected treasures that can emerge from seemingly ordinary objects, and how a small imperfection can lead to something far more valuable than anyone could have imagined. So, next time you come across a dime, take a closer look. Who knows? You might be holding onto a coin that could be worth far more than you ever thought possible. Thank you for joining me on this fascinating journey through the history of the 1972 worn die dime. If you've ever come across a rare coin or found an unusual piece of change, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. You never know, the next big discovery could be right in your pocket. In 1983, the US Mint quietly released a coin that, while seemingly ordinary, would eventually become one of the most coveted treasures in the world of numismatics. The coin in question? The 1983 USA 1 dime. At first glance, this dime might have appeared just like any other dime in circulation, carrying its typical value of 10 cents. But hidden beneath its familiar design and small denomination was an extraordinary twist of fate. A mistake during the minting process led to a rare coin that today holds an astonishing value of $120,000. The story of this coin's journey from everyday pocket change to a highly sought-after collectible is one filled with surprises, twists, and the allure of rare treasures that numismatists dream of finding. To understand the significance of the 1983 dime, we need to first explore the historical context in which it was minted. The early 1980s were a time of economic change in the United States. The country was recovering from the 1970s economic downturn and inflation, with a new wave of policies under President Ronald Reagan aiming to turn the economy around. In terms of coinage, the U.S. Mint was continuing its tradition of producing coins that represented national symbols and values. The dime, as one of the most widely circulated coins, was no exception. The design of the dime, which had remained relatively unchanged for decades, featured the portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, or front of the coin. This design had been in use since 1946, the year after Roosevelt's death, as a tribute to his leadership during the Great Depression and World War II. On the reverse side, the dime displayed a torch, olive branch, and oak branch, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. These elements were part of the dime's design since it was first struck in 1946, making it one of the most iconic and recognizable coins in American history. However, the 1983 dime would not be remembered just for its design or historical context. Like many coins throughout history, an error occurred during its production that would change the fate of some of these dimes forever. This error would make the 1983 dime one of the most valuable coins in the world of numismatics, and one that collectors would seek out with fervor. The mistake that set the 1983 dime apart was a relatively small issue, but one that would ultimately lead to a major increase in its value. The error occurred when the U.S. Mint produced a number of 1983 dimes using the wrong metal composition. Typically, dimes are struck using a mixture of copper and nickel. However, a small batch of 1983 dimes was mistakenly struck with a pure copper core instead of the usual copper-nickel blend. This error was not immediately noticed by the mint or the public, but over time, collectors began to notice that certain 1983 dimes had a slightly different color and feel to them. The pure copper core gave the dimes a reddish hue that was distinct from the usual silver-colored appearance of the copper-nickel blend used for most dimes. Upon closer inspection, numismatists realized that these dimes had been struck with the wrong metal composition, marking them as an error in the minting process. So why does a minting error like this make a coin so valuable? In the world of numismatics, rarity is everything. Coins with errors are highly sought after because they are produced in limited numbers, often by mistake, and because of their unique characteristics. In the case of the 1983 copper core dimes, only a small number of these error coins were produced, making them incredibly rare. Their value increased as collectors began to realize how special these coins were, and demand for them grew rapidly. The 1983 copper core dime quickly became a prized item in the world of coin collecting. What had started as a small mistake in the minting process had turned into a discovery that excited collectors around the world. These error coins became the subject of heated bidding wars, as collectors fought to own a piece of history. What was once just a dime, a coin worth only 10 cents, was now worth far more, thanks to a combination of rarity, demand, and the fascinating story behind its creation. As the years passed, the value of the 1983 copper core dime continued to rise. Collectors continued to search for these rare coins, and the excitement surrounding them only increased. They became a symbol of the serendipity that often defines the world of coin collecting, how a simple mistake can lead to the creation of a coin that holds immense value, both in terms of monetary worth and historical significance. Now, you may be wondering, what is the value of the 1983 copper core dime today? Well, after years of growing interest and rising demand, the value of these rare error coins has skyrocketed. Today, a 1983 copper core dime can fetch a jaw-dropping $120,000, making it one of the most valuable dimes ever produced in the United States. Yes, you heard that right, a dime, originally worth just 10 cents, is now worth $120,000, thanks to a small mistake in the minting process that led to its creation. This incredible value is a testament to the unpredictability of the coin collecting world. What was once an ordinary piece of change, destined to be spent and forgotten, has now become a highly sought-after treasure, all because of a small error that made it unique. The 1983 copper core dime serves as a reminder that in the world of numismatics, rarity, historical significance, and the story behind the coin can transform even the most ordinary items into valuable collectibles. So, next time you're sifting through your pocket change, take a closer look at those dimes. You might just be holding onto a rare treasure, one that could be worth far more than you ever imagined. Thank you for joining me on this fascinating journey through the story of the 1983 copper core dime. If you've ever come across a rare coin, or if you're now inspired to check your pocket change more carefully, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Who knows? The next big discovery might be right at your fingertips. In 1991, a small but significant event took place at the U.S. Mint, the production of the 1991 USA 1 dime coin. At first glance, this dime was like any other. A simple 10-cent piece with the familiar design of Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the iconic torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse. It didn't look particularly special or remarkable in the slightest. After all, dimes had been circulating for years, each one carrying the same design and the same function, to serve as a piece of everyday change, used for transactions both small and large. But as is often the case in the world of coin collecting, things aren't always what they seem. Hidden beneath the surface of that unassuming dime was a story that would captivate collectors and investors for years to come, culminating in a value today that might just take you by surprise, a staggering $114,000. To truly appreciate the significance of the 1991 dime, we need to understand the historical context in which it was minted. The year 1991 was a time of transition in the United States. The nation had just come through the end of the Cold War, the Gulf War was making headlines, and the economy was recovering after the 1980s. It was a time of technological change, with the internet starting to make its first real impact on everyday life. But despite all these changes, the U.S. Mint continued to produce coins using the designs that had been in place for decades, including the dime. The design of the dime has remained largely the same since 1946, when Franklin D. Roosevelt's image was first featured on the obverse of the coin. Roosevelt, who had led the country through the Great Depression and World War II, was honored with this portrait after his passing, and his likeness continues to adorn the coin to this day. On the reverse side, the design features a torch, olive branch, and oak branch, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. This simple yet powerful imagery has made the dime one of the most iconic coins in U.S. history, but in 1991, something was brewing that would change the fate of some of these dimes forever. Like most years, the U.S. Mint produced millions of dimes in 1991. However, as sometimes happens with large-scale production, a small mistake during the minting process led to a very rare and very valuable error. The error in question was a result of the use of a worn or damaged die, which led to some of the 1991 dimes being struck with a slight design flaw. In coin collecting, an error like this can make a coin highly desirable, especially if it's a rare mistake that only affects a small batch of coins. The flaw caused some of the 1991 dimes to have a weak strike, with the details on the coin being less clear or defined than they should have been. For collectors, a weak strike can be seen as a sign of rarity, especially when it occurs on a coin that's already in high demand, like the dime. But what made the 1991 dime truly exceptional wasn't just the weak strike. It was the fact that only a small number of these flawed coins were produced. While the majority of the 1991 dimes struck at the mint that year were produced with sharp, clear details, a select few were affected by this imperfection. As a result, these dimes became some of the most sought-after coins of the decade, with collectors scouring through rolls of dimes and searching through their pocket change in hopes of finding one of these rare error coins. Now, it's important to understand that in the world of coin collecting, rarity is key. A coin that is part of a larger, mass-produced batch will never have the same value as a coin that was produced in limited numbers or with an unusual characteristic. Error coins, such as the 1991 dimes with weak strikes, are particularly valuable because they represent an anomaly in the minting process. These coins were never meant to exist in this form, and their rarity makes them incredibly desirable to collectors who are looking for something unique and exceptional. Over time, as collectors became aware of the 1991 weak strike dimes, the demand for them only increased. Coins that were once considered little more than change began to take on a whole new level of significance. The story of the 1991 dime became one of those fascinating tales that collectors love to tell, how an error at the U.S. Mint turned a simple dime into a coveted treasure, worth far more than its original 10-cent face value. As the years went by, the 1991 weak strike dimes became even more valuable, with prices steadily rising as interest in these error coins grew. What had once been a dime worth just 10 cents began to fetch hundreds, then thousands, and eventually tens of thousands of dollars at auctions. Collectors, dealers, and investors alike became increasingly aware of the potential value of these coins, and the race to own a 1991 weak strike dime intensified. So, where does the 1991 dime stand today in terms of its value? After years of increasing demand and recognition of its rarity, the value of this coin has reached impressive heights. Today, a 1991 weak strike dime can fetch an incredible $114,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. A single 1991 dime, which was originally worth just 10 cents, is now valued at $114,000. This is a remarkable increase in value, and it serves as a testament to the fascinating world of coin collecting, where even the most seemingly ordinary coins can become treasures of extraordinary worth. This huge value spike is driven by the rarity of the weak strike error and the increasing number of collectors who want to own a piece of numismatic history. It's also a reflection of how coin collecting has become more popular and competitive over the years, as new generations of collectors and investors discover the joy and excitement of finding rare coins with historical significance. So, what makes the 1991 weak strike dime so valuable today? It's a combination of rarity, demand, and the story behind it. The fact that only a limited number of these coins were produced, combined with the error that makes them distinct, has turned them into a highly prized collectible. And as the years go on, the value of this coin may continue to rise, as collectors and investors recognize it as one of the most important error coins of the modern era. If you're ever going through your pocket change or browsing through coin rolls, take a moment to check those dimes. Who knows? You might just find yourself holding onto a rare treasure worth far more than you ever imagined. The 1991 weak strike dime is a reminder that sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries are hidden in the most ordinary of places. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history and significance of the 1991 weak strike dime. If you've ever come across a rare coin, or if you've been lucky enough to find one of these incredible error coins, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And remember, in the world of coin collecting, anything is possible. The next big find could be in your hands right now.